ladies, Farmer Courtney here. How to eat to live and grocery store. So I was just at the grocery store. It's actually one of my favorite activities. So for me, I grew up partly in a health food store, right? I was 15, felt like I knew a lot of things then, but I was such a baby in my experience in life. And so I landed this job in the health food store. And the reason why I even walked in the health food store in the first place is because I had been in trouble in school and I had gotten suspended. And in the detention room, the lady, the social worker that was in there, she was this really beautiful woman and she had style and like a glow about her that the other people in the entirety of my middle school environment did not possess. And so I thought, what's she doing? And I was real rebellious and just, emotionally distraught and didn't want to be in there, but I was happy that I wasn't in class because I was being bullied. So it was just sort of like, I did enjoy that I didn't have to do work. And so, I'm trying to be coolish, right, when I'm dealing with her because she was trying to make friends with me. And she brought in these rectangular amaranth graham crackers. And they came in a package that I was unfamiliar with. I mean, I knew graham crackers, animal crackers, graham crackers. They came in, in the box. They were really utility. These were not. These were like very fanciful graham crackers, so she offered me some because she was eating them in front of me. And I took them and I was eating them and I thought, oh, these are good. And then I didn't usually just get like 1 day suspension, so I was probably in there all week. And so I got to observe all of the snacks and things that she was eating. So the next day it was plantain chips. The day after that it was something else. And so I thought, I don't see these foods in the store where my mother shops. Where do you get them? And she told me, and I was like, oh, that's actually right next to McDonald's. I love McDonald's. I go there all the time. It's right by Baskin Robbins. It's right by the pizza place. It's right by, the regular grocery store that we shop at. It's by the German deli. Like, oh, I know that, that complex. And so I just kind of timidly went in there. I asked my mom, I was an only child, so she was sort of like, yeah, sure, we can go in there, look around. I had been to health food stores before because I had some weird neighbors, right? They were, the closest neighbors to me, and their children were my age, and they were really nice people to me. But what I mean by weird was they used to eat whole wheat pasta. They had really thick peanut butter that you grind yourself at the store. They only ate carob. They didn't eat chocolate, and they ate those Panda licorice chews. And at Halloween, their mothers would come to our house beforehand and say, when my children knock on the door, can you give them these treats because we don't want them to have the candy. And so we would just do it. And so I was over there a lot, like eating the whole wheat bread and the really thick peanut butter and the choking down the whole wheat pasta because I didn't want sauce or whatever. So it was like a different world. And the one family had a home birth, and it was just different, right? It was really, but they were some of my best friends in the neighborhood, and so I would, hang out with them a lot. And I'm sure I was quite a mess of a kid to host as far as just being like a little tornado, emotionally and headstrongly, because that's what happens to only children oftentimes. All that to say is I would walk to town with them occasionally, and we would do errands, and we would go to the other health food store in town that was really kind of stinky. They had a big cheese counter. The whole place was dominated by the odor of it. And we would, get all those items that I just listed and then, walk back to the house or whatever, because they weren't extreme. They did still shop in the regular grocery store, but I guess those were the certain items that they, planted their feet on and said, we're definitely taking a stand around these things, and then we'll, pick and choose from the rest, because it was really a small store, and they had larger families than I did. The one family had 2 daughters and the other family had 3, so they were I was like order of magnitude much larger than my family. So I would see it, and I didn't really think about it. Those families moved, and then I found myself going into this health food store again, and they didn't have a cheese counter. So I immediately liked it. It smelled like essential oils, and it smelled like spices. When you first walked in, the bulk section of all, the dried figs and dates and papaya and pineapple and everything, that was on the right. And on the left was the all of the bulk spices and everything. And then in the middle was the bulk grains and the oats and things. And then there was the counter. One aisle had all the supplements, and then the middle aisles had, you know, the teas and the juices, and all the boxes were so beautiful. It was a totally different thing. It wasn't just utility, you know, blaring lights and huge scale, get your food. It was like, these people had some food. Like, look at this food. It was all packaged and artsy. And I do a lot of things, but artistic stuff, as far as like, you know, writing and graphic kind of artistic stuff, I don't possess that. So there was something really appealing about, you know, like a beautiful label on a juice. And many of these companies are not in business anymore, because in the first wave of when organics started to get really huge, they were bought out. And then it was just, they grabbed the market share. These larger, you know, corporations grabbed the market share, and then it fell. And they didn't, you know, After the Fall Juices was one of them. Celestial Seasonings is kind of like what I'm talking about, those tea boxes with the beautiful things. And so anyway, I went in there, long story, all that description, looking for these amaranth graham crackers. And I pretty much got hooked on the health food experience right after that. I thought, I want to have that sense of vibrancy and otherness, differentness that this counselor has. I don't want to be like all these people that are walking around just kind of numb and like not vibrant, you know, like I want to have a different experience. And so my rebellion is rooted in the health food store. So I got into, you know, healthy living, and then they were vegans. And so as far as health trends and things like that, they were on the beginning wave of that. Macrobiotics, there was like a poster on the wall about macrobiotic diet and how the percentages are arranged. And, you know, we did sell organic meats and some things there, you know, an alternative thing. But I just thought like, oh, okay, so because when you trick people and you lie to them about so many things, or you just leave the, you know, the barn door open and let whatever crazy corporate scheme to make money off people while you poison them run right in, you know, it's, as a youth, it was hard for me to decipher, like, well, maybe it's all just trash because they're lying about this and they're lying about that. And so, yeah, then veganism must be, you know, must be the thing. So I got really into all these fanciful narratives about veganism and, you know, like survival into the 21st century and back to Eden. And not that that wasn't a grounded book in some ways, but you know what I'm saying? Like if you grew up reading any of those books, you know, let me know. But like colon cleanses, fasting, purification, all of that, detoxing, it wasn't so trendy, but it was, you know, purification, fasting, just trying to rid the body of all the poisons and stuff that we used to deal with in the world, and then coming into this new expression of healthy eating. So all this to say is that I've observed all these health trends, and now with this massive commercialization. So when I go to the grocery store, I'm like looking around, studying, thinking, seeing all this stuff. And right now, the amount of product is like up here, and the amount of nutritional, you know, like merit to most of these products is way down here. And not only that, then that lack of nourishment has a huge health consequence later down the line. And none of these marketing execs who are like sitting around thinking, how do we pitch, you know, kale as a health food, or how do we get people, you know, all eating oat milk and oat cheeses and or kombucha this, or you know, coconut that. Like they're just thinking about their zone of like, how do we sell a product, how do we make it appealing? And because there's been such a engulfing of the small or natural food products by these mega corporations, which caused the food issue in the first place with their practices, and then they kind of swallowed up the alternative anyway, you know, it just gives me pause. And so I put together this new guide, like a decoder, to help people with sorting all this out, right? Is it a health trend or is it a trick? And let's go over some of the language, right? Plant-based, for example. You can't turn on a Netflix show about, you know, food documentary without hearing plant-based, right? That's going to be the salvation. Plant-based is the holy grail, and vegan this and vegan that. And we don't have a lot of space to really, have equal footing to push back on all of that stuff. But it just got me thinking about plants, right? And the double meaning of that, because in study group, we're taught to really study a word. You can't pass a word that you don't understand, or if you have a prompting when you see it. So I started seeing, plant. We will be setting up plants to manufacture birth control. So when I read that, I'm thinking, so you are saying the word plant because people think that pharmaceutical plants manufacture pharmaceutical birth control. But when I read that, and it's the same people that are all involved in the Great Reset and like doing things with the food supply, I'm thinking maybe there's another plant that an input from that pharmaceutical plant is going into like a plant with roots and leaves and a plant that people consume. And then everyone thinks that plant-based is best. And so I just thought, okay, I've been really blessed by these books. I also slept on them for a really long time. They went right over my head because I thought like, oh, that's fantastic advice about fasting, and it's best to be a vegetarian, and I love beans. And so like I was simple-minded. And so even though it is a simple truth and a simple teaching, I was, thought I knew something. I thought I knew something. So I passed by that, It was like, oh, that's 101. Like, I know so much more than that. Fool. Such a fool. So then, like, I had to go through this whole experience that I've shared about my breast milk saga and having to make homemade formula, because all of that health trend, it became a health hazard, and I really hit a wall. And then I had to undo all of that. So I already was into natural remedies. I already was into real nutrition. But then I had to do corrective work and just realize that sometimes you can make huge mistakes by following health trends. And just because it feels like it's so much better than the food death culture that's pushed through the fast food, it actually, if you follow up the chain of profit, it leads to the same coffers often. So anyway, all that to say, I know this is getting long. So health trend or trick, hit the link below, and you can go over to farmercourtney.com, which is my website, and get your free copy of it. And just, it's just a way to have this book in your mind every time you see a health trend, because it's so insane out there to me, just what is being pushed as health food. And then I see all the steps in agriculture and the shifts and everything that has to go to supply that, and it is not sustainable. And so what's going to happen is, and this is taking apart the very large factor of the weather, like we're just going to put that on the shelf right now. And if human beings were in the favor of God and we could just carry on doing whatever we want, and we were blessed with just the right amount of wind and rain and moisture and cloud cover, and everything was just so as a blessing of weather. So let's imagine even in that scenario. So when we take theories and then we create health trends from emotions, and then those health trends drive purchases drive trends in the marketplace, and then the manufacturers are scrambling for those kind of ingredients. Word goes out to the producers of these things. So you can only produce so many things. So then you stop maybe having a diversity that you had once on your farm. And I'm speaking about farms that are much bigger than mine, but I'm just imagining that I was a big farmer. And so maybe I'm looking at my profit and loss and thinking like, well, yeah, these things weren't really performing as well as I thought. This corporation, this purchaser is looking to buy this product from me, so let me increase this one segment of what I produce to produce for that. And so it just, if you see what I mean, and I'll be talking more about this in the future. So these idealist and like thought-based realities that aren't backed up by fact, then if they shift production, then that could all play out in a way that there could be, crop loss in that, in like worst case scenario. It could also just, drive trends so that previously available throughout all of human history type foods that people relied upon are displaced and not produced as much. And then let's take the weather off the shelf, because the world is not in the good graces and favor of God. This is the judgment hour. So let's put that right back over all of these people playing chess with the food supply and trying to have trends and basically to have an undernourished, more docile population that doesn't really know any better, because we're being entertained all the time. We're, on our phones, we're being entertained. We're also being agitated. We're being stressed and traumatized. They have all these different levers and factors that they deploy on people through social media and through the news and just all these different things. So all this is happening simultaneously. It's really not going to serve us well at all. And the beauty also of How to Eat to Live, aside from the entirety of the book itself. So starting from the top, From God, In Person, Master Fard Muhammad. So the beauty of that, after all this time, right? So these holy books that have promise of a time at the end of the world that God would return. So that, let's just so there's that this is not the most honorable Elijah Muhammad just sort of gleaning from his experience of being in a rural area in his youth and having experience observing natural farms and farming and rural living. This isn't him just riffing, right? But this is him who got instruction in person from Master Fard Muhammad, right there. Take it or leave it alone, right? So on good authority, right? The authority that was prophesied to come in all the Holy Scriptures, if understood. So he gave us instruction of what to focus on. So if we are focused on those foods and we're focused on producing that demand and building up, there'll be a resiliency in that system versus this consumer-driven commercialization health trend, or is it a trick type of reality, right? And then How to Eat to Live. I've often wanted to write that out. So How to Eat to Live, period, right? How to Eat to Live. And then it's also like, you could have it with a, exclamation point, an underline. You could have it all different types of ways, because there's so many levels of meaning within this book. And I don't have any problem just, sharing my level of ignorance that I missed it, that I really missed it. And it wasn't until just being out on the farm and having to do nasty jobs out on the farm, right? Like having to be out in the patches where there's an insect infestation and going through the work of like picking nasty bugs off plants, and then having this be in my mind, just circulating in my mind, me thinking on it, going through experiences with the babies. Like, oh my word, if I had been in charge, right, of some thing, right? Like if I hadn't chosen to go down the path of motherhood and staying home and farming, right? What if I chose to be some sort of like corporate exec with my food passion or whatever? What if I had really been one of those people that took all those books I mentioned, took my passion for veganism and health trends and kale and all these things that I thought were health trends and really great for humanity, that were really a trick because we're operating out of ignorance. If I had used my brain power to influence and push even more energy away from the food, one major food that's outlined in here, which is milk from well-raised cows, I thought, my God, my babies would be undernourished and starving right now. Thank God I'm not in charge of anything, thank God. And I started to really see it. So that is the mindset behind just, I get comments a lot of times like, thank you for giving credit where credit is due. We don't have a lot of time for people not to be giving credit where credit is due. And I don't even feel like I do the book justice. I just kind of speak from my heart when I share about it. But there's so much within these 2 volumes. There's 2 volumes in case you're new to this book. And so it is written in a way that is a prescription for a people. So if you come to read this book and you've never read anything by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and you don't know who he is, you might want a bit of an introduction because it wasn't written for Caucasians who are shopping in health food stores, and that wasn't this prescription for how to eat to live came through a specific man at a specific time for a specific people, but it can benefit all of humanity and inform us. But I'd just like to give a little bit of an introduction. I do have another book list resource where I put together 7 books I wish that I had read 20 years ago to really help me not only understand the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, because I did understand him to a degree, but I didn't understand where I fit in that. Like, I just thought, okay, I know what that means for you all, and and then what does that mean for me? But I just I kept asking because I just felt like this is the truth and I don't know, but I'm gonna hang on until such a time that somebody can teach me and I can learn more. So if you want that, I'll leave a link in the description below for that, and you can just see for yourself what are the 7 books that I wish I had known to read 20 years ago. Because one of the things about the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad is a lot of times people like to pick and choose pieces, and how I talked about the rebel of myself in my rebellious nature. There are people who will give lip service to the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, but then they're not actually fully in alignment with what he taught. And so their rebel hasn't been checked either. So the resources that I put together are just solid grounding resources for you not to be like spiraling out in rabbit holes and like wasting years of misunderstanding. It still might take you 20 or 30 years to fully grasp it, but at least you'll be under the right guidance and you'll have a bit more discipline when doing it, because it can be really disturbing and upsetting for a Caucasian just to be riffing on it about people who they themselves are not in obedience to the teachings. And so that's part of what's kept me quiet all these years, is I just felt like, well, this has caused a lot of enlightenment and blessing in my own understanding of how I see the world and how I see the time. But it left me in a lot of confusion because I was that rebel. I was undereducated, miseducated, and, felt like I had more going on than I did. And in the end, I was really just an untrained mind that lacked discipline. And so it left me in a lot of confusion because I was always asking questions and things like that. So this is, a lot of my things are like, here, you can benefit from my 25 years of, having to just like, in the trenches of both natural family living and trying to understand the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad as a Caucasian, living in isolation without anybody really to like, build with and bounce things off in an organized fashion, in a way that I wasn't just sort of left, with, I could ask 3 questions and then it would be months or sometimes a year before I could ask another one and that kind of thing. So now you live in a different time. You can be very connected with all types of resources that I didn't have access to. So I've tidied them up, right? So if you want the health trend or trick, the link is in the description. If you want the 7, that's what it's called, 7 books I wish I had known to read 20 years ago. I'll link to that. All right, I know this one's been the longest ever, but there was a lot on my mind. So this is number 19. All right, peace until next time.